Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. I love the reviews, and that's how we get the word out about what we do. Our guest today is in Arizona. Tim Taylor is a patent attorney, been licensed for the last 5 years, but been in the industry for 13 years. Kind of grew up on the poor side, now building an amazing life for him and his family. They have 4 kids, so that's pretty cool. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what got you into law, and what are some of the hurdles that you overcame, like you had mentioned before we started airing, that you grew up poor and kind of grew up, I guess, poor middle class somewhere in there. So what were some of the obstacles you have had to overcome, and what are some tips for people that might be in the same position?
So grew up poor. I don't think my dad ever made more than 25,000 in a year, and he had a family of 5. So I'll kind of give you. My mom stayed at home. We were homeschooled for grade school, but we grew all our own food, and so I think that was one way how we made it. But I didn't have a new pair of clothes until probably 14 when I got a job. Normally we went to Goodwill and on the sale days. Or I got the hand-me-downs because I was the middle of 3 boys. But how I got into law, I lived in Maui for 4 years. I moved there when I was 22. After doing some multi-level marketing, that went bankrupt. I was working with Excel Communications, if anyone's ever heard of that. Was doing pretty well, and then it went bankrupt. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, so got the opportunity to go to Maui, and I said, well, why would I pass that up? Let's check out this beautiful island. And so I was still looking for, some business to start. So I started an auto detailing business out there. And I was detailing this one gentleman's 4 BMWs. I went into his office to get his check, and I saw a lot of cool stuff on the wall. I started asking him questions like, what do you do? What is this? And he told me, oh, I'm a patent attorney. I'm protecting these inventions, and this is, the technology I'm looking at. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really exciting. That's kind of how my brain works already. I've always been very analytical, kind of engineering mind. And so, right about that time, I actually wanted to get into real estate, but I had found out that I was going to be a father right at about this same time. And I wanted to ensure that my kids had the ability to, do things and have things that I didn't have. And so I was like, well, but, I really wanted to do real estate, but I said, hey, I know this is a sure thing. And so I went back to school to become a patent attorney. And so that's how I got into law. And I've been working for that gentleman's firm for 13 years.
Wow. And so then do you plan to still go into real estate?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I'm later today. I'm attending an event with Robert Kiyosaki
Cool.
here in Arizona, and actually, he's kind of what the catalyst for everything. When I was 15, one of my friend's dads gave him the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he didn't care for it, but I saw it and I was like, whoa, what the rich teach their kids, about money that the poor don't. I was like, I need to know this, and so I read that book. And that kind of started me on my journey of, trying to figure out how to be very successful.
That's cool. So where do you want to do with real estate? What's your goals with real estate?
Own a bunch of apartments.
Okay, cool. It does sound like that's more
As
of your
many,
passion.
as many doors as possible.
Cool. And what's your like you said, you grew up poor and you know, making income, of course. Like where do you want to go with it? Like what's your big driver? What drives Tim?
Um, well, I mean, first to be financially free, to be able to, I mean, well, in America, we have freedom of speech, but you really don't have freedom of speech until you are financially free,
Hmm.
uh, because it just makes sense, right? I mean, whatever donor, investor, boss, everyone has um, their, opinions, their viewpoints, their beliefs, and so, if you run astray, it just would make sense. Well, we don't align anymore, and you kind of have to go. So if you are very opinionated like myself, one thing would be is, to get financially free so you have the freedom to speak your mind without worrying like, oh, well, I'm going to get fired, or I'm going to get moved or transferred, or this sponsor is going to, yank the cord on funding and stuff like that. So that would be a main driver. Also just the ability to provide my family with, everything that they would want and need without spoiling them so that they, aren't good humans anymore.
That's always a good thing. So, I mean, you're obviously into personal development. When did you get into that? And, how has that played an instrumental role in your growth, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it started with Robert Kiyosaki's book. Then I probably, I'm trying to think, I joined Excel Communications when I was basically right when I turned 18. And so, there's a lot of kind of promotion of self-improvement books. Trying to remember the next books, probably Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and then The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. I started kind of along those lines. And, once Excel went bankrupt, honestly, I kind of lost my way for probably 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, I worked 80 hours a week for a year and a half, 2 years, and I was just burnt out. I tried doing a different MLM company and just didn't have the same passion and fire behind it. And so then I started becoming a bartender. That's when I moved to Maui.
Always sounds nice.
It was very nice. Yeah, it was very nice. I always say, if you want to surf and smoke weed, there's no better place. But I wanted more out of life. And so, that's what, brought me back to go back to school and everything. But yeah, I mean, I that's kind of how I found Arete was, I was at a Clever Investor Summit here in Arizona, and Andy came and spoke. He was the keynote speaker, and I was like, wow,
he speaks his mind.
Yes, this guy speaks his mind. This guy is epic. I just love his enthusiasm, his drive, his candor. And so I started listening to the MF CEO project right after that. I was like, who is this guy? So I started following him. And then, I got into Ed Milet, and that was probably about 4 years ago.
That's cool. What are some of the hurdles that you've, had as you've going through this journey of, going through, I guess, rebranding yourself to going from, well, bartending, and then now you're turning, and then you're going to go into real estate. What are some of the obstacles that you've, had to overcome, and what are some tips that you could give someone that's, working on something similar to you?
Man, I try to Grant Cardone was another big influence on me. And there's a chapter in 10X where it's take responsibility. And so I almost always look at hurdles and obstacles as just an opportunity. I don't really even think about them, as an issue. It's just my responsibility to have seen them. I mean, looking back, hindsight's obviously 2020. Looking back, I missed a lot of things. I wish I could have changed a lot of different things. But I don't know. I just say, okay, well, now going forward, I need to try and look at all the vantage points and all the scenarios that could unfold and make sure that I'm prepared no matter what. I mean, there's challenges every day. And I think the more successful you get, the more challenges you face. Mm-hmm. So I think, but for me, as a tip would just be stay even-handed. I don't get emotional during trying times. So I use it as fuel to move forward, but also, take a step back and just try to look at the situation unemotionally. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I've had disagreements with others on how I think things should be done, but then I have to take a step back and say, well, from their vantage point, they're right. They're always right from their vantage point. No doubtedly, if I was in their position, I would feel the exact same way that they feel. So I disagree with them right now, but, have empathy, understanding, and then try to figure out either a compromise or, hey, you got to stand up for yourself and move on and move a different direction if you can't come to an agreement. But not letting them hold you down, using it as fuel to a certain extent. You just a little bit of fuel, but you don't want hate, because that's just going to consume you. Just have it drive, use that as motivation to drive you forward, keep you focused. But don't look back in the rear view. I think, was it, I saw a quote by Jelly Roll, who's a country singer.
Okay.
And he said the windshield is much bigger than the rear view mirror for a reason. And I really like that.
True. That's so good. And where did associations, like as you've gone through this, was your family super supportive? Were your friends always supportive? Like, and if not, how did you go through
Yeah.
that?
When I did multi-level marketing, my family was not supportive. And I was always like, I'm going to prove you wrong, prove you wrong. And then I was getting very successful and the company went bankrupt. So didn't prove them wrong there. As I went into, my path to becoming a lawyer, they're supportive, kind of going to school, getting a degree that made sense, it makes sense to most people. So.
And now thinking of getting out of law and getting into real estate,
Yeah.
how does that work into things?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's supportive. I mean, I don't keep people around that aren't supportive. So, if you're not supportive, then why would I want you around? I mean, we can disagree on things, but if you're still not supporting me, then I'm not going to have you in my life. But yeah, my family's supportive now. I mean, they proof is in the pudding. I mean, they've seen what I've done. I do hard things all the time. Like I get into a cold plunge.
Yeah, you were talking about that this morning.
Every day, and I'm out there trying to compete in sports and do other things. I'm one of the hardest workers that I know. So yeah, they're supportive. I mean, my wife is extremely supportive, and that's always good. I think if you don't have a partner that is supportive, that is a big red flag.
Yeah, that'd be tough for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. What are some tips? So someone's like an aspiring, they're just getting into some things, and you did, like you said, you were pretty successful on an MLM, so you have built something in one of the harder industries to definitely build something. And whether they've been bankrupt or not doesn't mean that you weren't successful. So, what were some things that, a person could do daily, or, what kind of, did you saw it? So you built a team, obviously. What are some things that take people out of the game of whatever business they're in that you see that maybe they could, not have them take them out? Like that would help them through those times.
Man, I mean, never giving up, really. I didn't have success for a while, but I kept pushing, and then finally hit. I would say don't be afraid to take risks. So one of the things I started in Sacramento, and we had a huge team in Sacramento, and I saw the market kind of being saturated. So it seemed like every other person I talked to was like, "Oh, we've heard of you guys. We've heard of you guys." I'm like, okay, I got to go somewhere else. So we started going down to the Bay Area. It panned out a little bit, but not a lot. And then for some reason, I was talking with one of my downline reps, and we were just kind of brainstorming ideas. We're like, man, how do we get this thing going? And for some reason, we're like, Denver. We should go to Denver. I'd never been to Denver. We got a harebrained idea to go to Denver. 2 weeks later, we packed up our car and we're driving to Denver. We didn't have an apartment rented. We had nothing. We just drove there. We're like, we're going to Denver and we're going to start, we're going to dominate the market in Denver. So we went there, and, within 6 months we had I'm 19 at the time. We had a meeting of over 100 people. I was in 4 different cities. I was in Fort Collins. I was in Boulder. I was in, Colorado Springs and Denver. And one of the things I was doing is I finally, we did a lot of one-on-one appointments at coffee shops. That's how we would, what we called show the plan, how we would show the business model.
Yeah.
And I noticed a lot of times, well, if I had one person, we'd get a lot of flakes, probably 30% of people would flake and not show up. And I was like, man, I'm wasting all this time, I'm on the phone probably, one of my phone bills, I think, was over 10,000 minutes for the month. I'm on the phone. I mean, my ears were hot because back in the day, the phones weren't as good. So they would
Right.
get hot. And, I have to switch or I have to switch ears because my ears would be too hot. I was on the phone so much. But finally, I just got an idea to start triple booking everything. And so I would start triple booking appointments. And then I don't know why we hadn't thought of this earlier. It seems like the simplest thing in the world. But then I really use that to kind of, I don't know, create scarcity. It's like if I saw someone wasn't interested, early in the meeting, I would just excuse them. They're like, oh, like, hey, maybe we should, maybe this is, it gives it more of the effect that it's, even though obviously anyone can join, but it gives it more of a procedure. Like, hey, not anyone can join my team. Like
Right.
there's a certain level of, of effort and character and the type of person that we're looking for to join our team. And so once I started triple booking, I started, really seeing a lot of success. And so the tips, yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to try new things, but obviously keep pushing. I probably spent over a year with not a ton of success, and then, the last week, was easily, well, I was over $4,000 for the week. Easy. I mean, not a lot of money, but for 19 years old, kind of doing what I was doing, it really looked like I was going to be retired in a few years based off of the current trajectory I was on. And then it was a lot of devastation. But I didn't give up. I tried again, and then that didn't work out. So, but
what got you through some of those days? I mean, 10,000 minutes is a lot of calls.
Yeah.
And you're 19. So what
Yep.
drove you? Like what motivated you so much? And on the days you didn't want to work, which I'm sure there was tons of those,
All of them. Yeah.
I mean, especially at 19, like I would rather be partying.
Yeah.
What got you enough that you wanted to make calls and like go prospect and do all the things of building a business? Like, what is it that drove you, and what could someone take from it to help drive themselves on the days they don't feel like working?
Yeah, that's one of the things I've thought about and why I'm concerned about spoiling my kids to a certain extent. The drive was no air conditioning growing up. No clothes, can't afford this and that. Once I turned 14 and I started working, I was able to buy myself a computer and buy myself clothes and stuff. But yeah, I think just not really having much and wanting to have had the Nintendo when I was 12, or the basketball shoes when I was 13. That kind of drove me. So I wish there was something else I could say, because now I'm trying to figure out for my kids, well, how do I drive them? They already know that I'm not paying for college. And that they're going to have to, as soon as they start working, working age, they're going to have to start, making their own money and stuff. But yeah, I really wish I knew, how to insert that hunger into someone who didn't come up how I came up. I don't really know how you would do that.
What did you find, like what drives you now? I mean, obviously you're not
Yeah.
starving now, you're doing
No.
well. So what
Yes.
drives you now? Like once you hit a cash flow that you are comfortable, you have all the clothes,
Yeah.
you have all the needs, you have all
Yeah.
the extras even, you're still hustling. So what do you think it
Yes.
is that continues to have you drive and hustle when everything is now comfortable?
Well, I don't have everything I want yet. I don't have a hyperbaric chamber. I have the cold plunge, but I'd like to have, all the health benefit things that I can have, more time into, and really just more time, there's still lots of bills that need to be paid. And, I don't have a ton of residual income. So if I quit today, at a certain point, I'm going to have to start again. And, when you have 4 kids, you know how expensive they are, when they go to private school and, they have everything that they want and need. It's definitely, it's worth it. I want to give them that, but yeah, it costs a lot of money. So I mean, that's kind of the drive, is to get to a point where I have the freedom to say exactly what I want, kind of start a podcast like you, and yeah, like Joe Rogan, just kind of speak your mind, right? Like have the ability to just affect change. There's a lot of things that I see that I would like to change with politics and other things that I think in America are broken right now, and I'd like to be a force for good. And unfortunately, you can't really be a force for good if you don't have the financial resources to back it up, because if you're not going to be bought off by somebody, you kind of have to self-fund.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I know we were just at an RT event and they talked about that. Broke people don't have the impact, period. So I mean, that's a huge thing. What are some things that like you did every day or you still do? I mean, you do the cold plunge, but what are some things that you do every day to help strengthen your mind, I guess could be a good way to put it?
Exercise. Every day I got to move around. I have a standing desk, so even though I work on the computer most of the day, I get on my treadmill underneath the standing desk and do that. And then always, hit the gym at least 5 times a week. But always, yeah, exercise is definitely a must. You have to. And then eat healthy as much as you can. So just focus on, sure, I have cheat days, but focus on, 80 to 90% of the time eating super clean. I mean, that's a big difference for mental clarity. And you'd be surprised once you stop eating. Like I used to love Doritos. My favorite thing would be spicy or nacho Doritos. And boy, if I had one, I would just feel so sick after it. Now you realize how much chemicals, how much crap is in those.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, just the simple things: sleep, exercise, and eat good.
Awesome. And then do you do a lot of reading or listening to audio or not really a lot?
I do most for for like self improvement and stuff. I do mostly audio because I'm reading most of the day. Um, and so while I do, especially when I'm doing 75 hard and those things, I do read my 10 pages and stuff, and I enjoy it. But generally, I'm in the audio world, because then I'll normally work out to a podcast. I'll take a walk to a podcast. If I'm cleaning up the yard or whatever I'm doing, and I have time for a podcast, I'm generally putting on Real AF or Ed Milet or Grant Cardone, or something, or an audio book. Like I think recently I was listening to Extreme Ownership.
Good one, Jocko, right?
Yeah.
Jocko. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good book. That's awesome. So if someone's getting, you're just starting to get into the real estate industry, what are like some things that you're doing, or if someone wanted to, I don't know where you're at on this. So, if someone wants to get into that industry, because I think real estate is a massive thing that a lot of people want to get into. What are some things that, you're doing or you would suggest that someone does to start to navigate into that industry?
Well, yeah, I am not really doing much. That's just my plan. So I don't have any advice to give someone.
Okay. What are you going to do to navigate into that
Yeah.
industry then? Let's go with that.
Yeah. Well, I've been following real estate for 20 years, listening to Grant Cardone, and I got my real estate license. My brother's a real estate agent. So just, keeping an eye to the market, listening to real estate people talk about real estate. So yeah, just
Good.
the plan is to get that investment money allocated and ready, so that way when I see the opportunity. It's interesting with interest rates right now. What's going to happen in the market, we'll see. But yeah, just have that, just build that chest up and then start looking at deals, and then be ready to pounce once I find one. But yeah, be ready to look at least 100 deals, and not trying to rush into it. And I'm going to start a little bit smaller, so if I mess it up, which I'm sure I'll make a mistake somewhere, if I mess it up, it won't be detrimental.
That makes sense. Well, like anyone's listening, like he's put lots of time in, lots of listening. This isn't like a fly by night thing. So I think that that's really important if you're going to do something, especially like real estate, because it can be a lot of money. Really doing your homework
and talk to my CPA. Talk to my CPA about the tax, about making sure the taxes are aligned before, making sure from a tax perspective, it's going to make a lot of sense and it's the right time and stuff like that. So
that makes sense. Yes, talk to the CPA and stuff like that. That's awesome. So in wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions.
yeah.
And then anything that we didn't touch on that you just think, be really impactful for our listeners. First and final question is, what's one sentence that you could say to someone to help them find their purpose?
Believe in yourself. You, so go for it.
Love it. That's so good. Number 2 question is, what's one quote, and you might have more than one, but what comes to mind? What's a favorite quote and why?
Well, it's the Grant Cardone quote of "Don't be a little B word."
Don't be a little B word. Yeah.
And I like it just because for me it just really hits home about like taking responsibility for everything. He's talking about, well, you get rear-ended, you could have taken a different route, you could have left earlier. Well, hey, why are you even going to clients? You should be important enough that clients are driving to you. But just flipping everything around, never being a victim.
Good. I like that. I remember him saying that too. Third question is, what's one word or sentence that you would want on your gravestone?
Man, I would say, I guess I'll have to go with the sentence. He followed his own path and, he cared about me.
Cool. I like it. All right. So you run into someone in the coffee shop. They're like, hey, Tim, that's awesome. Like, I'm going to start some cold plunges. I'm going to, get more into audio associations, really study what it is I want to do for a while, that kind of thing. What's something we didn't touch on that you think, just would be really impactful for our listeners?
Well, I mean, if you really want something to stay disciplined, start with something small, making your bed, whatever it is, going for a walk, drinking 8 glasses of water a day or whatever. If you really want something, start, don't try and try to change everything all at once. Just try to get some wins in one area and build momentum and build belief in yourself. But at the end of the day, be true to your own self. When you are not operating at the levels you're capable of, and just do things, every single day to move you towards that person. Do things ethically, do things the right way, do hard things, and your life will be so much better.
Do the hard things to make an easy life. I love it. Very cool. Guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. If you have any questions, Tim's information will be in the show notes. I know he's a super helpful guy. Feel free to reach out about patents if there's something even specific, or just about cold plunges. He knows a lot more of this stuff than I do, so reach out on any of that if you'd like, for sure. Guys, let's go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one life at a time together, we can change the world. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Angela. Great to be here.